What did we think?
Amazing.
Amazing? Ken's a great moderator, and obviously Nico's incredible, so give him another round. Thank you so much for being part of it. Awesome, so we want to call up the next panel. I think the clicker is over there. I'll go ahead and click that. But yeah, for the 4 folks who are going to be on the next panel, if you guys could come up, and then we will go ahead and go through introductions. It'll be easier to do it up here. Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, so here's how this is going to go. We're going to go down the panel. We're going to start with where you came from, then what you're doing, and where we're headed. I've been doing this for a long time and done a lot of these panels, and I've never been able to say the following. Tyler, you started your career as an MMA fighter, and now you're selling AI to the Department of War. How did you end up in this position, sir?
Well, I needed to pay the bills, so I didn't have any money, and I was a Penn State wrestler and a Penn State boxer. Needed to pay the bills, wanted to have some fun without getting arrested, so I was cage fighting. I was pretty good at it, and then I actually fought a UFC world champ. He ended up beating me up pretty good, but then I beat the guy that knocked him out. So I felt pretty good about that. I actually got offered a UFC contract, but I had to decline it because it was only a 3-fight deal, $6,000 a fight, $6,000 a win. Wasn't good. So I took a job in software. But then I did ROTC, self-taught with AI. I've got this crazy journey, and then being in the military and building AI, I was like, why not build AI for the warfighter?
Great answer. Thank you.
But now I'm a lover, not a fighter.
I don't believe it, but okay. Hasibul, you were also an MMA fighter, right? No? Okay. So you were previously the head of engineering platform at Uber?
Yes.
And then what made you make the change tell me about your time at Uber and what made you make the transition to Casual Dynamics?
I started my career as a university professor. I was in kind of teaching computer science for 4 years. And then that time in 2007, I decided that teaching is so boring. So I decided to join Microsoft. And then I spent until almost 2007 to 2024, right up to the corporate ladder, work in a VMware, work in a Uber, work in a Microsoft. And then I decided, oh heck, I spent half of my life working in a corporate, but I love research so much. I want to be a kind of a frontier research lab. So I quit my corporate job and started a new lab and just publish a bunch of papers in Europe and all other top places. And we were in a Forbes last month, and I'm enjoying my life.
Awesome. Amazing. Okay. And then, Vamsi, another roundabout journey, right? You were 9 years in fintech, right? And now you are in sports enterprise AI. Is that right? Okay. So walk us through that journey, because we have 3 very traditional tracks here in front of us.
Yeah. So this is my 3rd chapter of my career, and every chapter has always begun with serendipity. I landed at a fintech when I had no idea what fintech is. The job I was being offered, I was like, oh, this is just a form where you fill out information and some money gets transferred. How hard can this be? I think serendipity is what led me to what I have learned, have grown to, have been successful at. So that's what I've optimized for. For me, the last couple of years at Remitly, which is actually a few floors above us, I felt like, man, the world is moving too fast. It's changing too fast. The way we build organizations, the way we build products are going to fundamentally change. And if I'm stuck in middle management, that's going to get obsolete. And so my impetus was mostly survival mode. It's like we need to get back to building. And then one of the co-founders of Remitly happened to buy a small stake in a sports team in London, and then realized some of the problems that sports teams have. And as he dove more into that, realized the value of building a business there. He invited me along the journey, and that's how I ended up here.
Very cool. Thank you. So we have three very different businesses here. Obviously, AI being the consistent theme. The next question, and this is to each of you, and I think we go in a row like we did last time. What problem are you solving? What are you disrupting? How do you fit within the ecosystem in the sandbox you're playing in?
So I'd say at Edgerunner, the problem that we're solving is enabling the warfighter to not just win the fight, but absolutely dominate it. And how do we do that? Well, it's better decision making. It's the capability to make a pretty good decision immediately than the perfect decision too late. And then how do we do that? Well, these large language models are the ultimate compression function for knowledge, whereby we can take an LLM, train it on all the military doctrine, all your TMs, your FMs, your SOPs. Effectively, what you have to learn as a warfighter to be capable, compress that knowledge into an LLM, and then interact with it via NLP, natural language processing, akin to a conversation we're having right now. The gentleman before us was talking about voice interfaces being the future, which is right. Think of it as like the Jarvis to your Iron Man. So now with all this knowledge compressed on device without the internet, we can talk to it like it's an AI battle buddy or an assistant. Just like Jarvis helps Tony, he helps Tony in his personal life. He helps him manage Pepper Potts to go out to dinner. But then more importantly, he knows everything about Tony's Iron Man suit. And so that's the vision, is building these LLMs that know everything about the warfighter and it's domain specific. So that's a problem that we're solving for. But like taking a step back, these LLMs, they're too generalized. ChatGPT, for example, was transcribed across all of the internet with 10 trillion tokens crammed into a model on a 100 gigabyte hard drive. And so there's a lot of junk on YouTube. There's a lot of garbage on the internet, garbage in, garbage out. So if you don't know the biases and AI is a harmful hallucination, you can't go and audit the data set and understand the calculation for how that happened. Because LLMs are probabilistic, you're predicting the next token. They're actually not reasoning. They are predicting the next token, which that's also another problem that we're trying to solve for. And what I think with reasoning, you need a North Star with a moral good, and that's how you'd reason through a problem. So as we build AI, so the warfighter, it needs to be culturally aware. Like we all speak English, but the warfighter jargon we speak is very different from a civilian. Or being in the Army, it's very different from the Air Force, or the Marine Corps, or the Space Force, or the Coast Guard. So similarly, if I were to take a model, translate it to Hebrew, it couldn't help the Israelis. So what are we doing? We're making AI context aware, we'll make it culturally aware. Just like the gentleman when you brought up the cat analogy, it's like context aware. Is it a literal cat? Is it the nickname? Is it a cat missile or a cat vehicle? And so now we're getting context aware. So I'd say the real problem that we're solving for is reducing cognitive load in the fight, so we can send our men and women in uniform back home with less scars.
Yeah, so we started our Caro AI with the thesis that sports teams are probably not at the highest peak of like what operational excellence look like. When you think of sports and the on-field performance and things like that, it's all about peak performance. But if you go back into the organizations and the business side of things, that muscle isn't quite there yet. And so our thesis is that we will be enabling them with the capabilities, with tools, with platforms that will actually enable them to operate like a top tier, tech company, let's say. These folks are organizing like really high stakes events, right? Like you get about 50,000, 100,000 people in the stadium. You got to market the event. You've got to figure out, how to price the tickets. You have to provide a pretty good fan experience to your very engaged fans. For a lot of people, sports is like a religion. And so you can imagine the stakes are probably not as high as what you folks are solving, but still high enough, different field. And so we're solving these type of issues for our pro sports teams. It's everything from marketing to planning, coordination, operations, fan experience, pricing, I already mentioned, analytics. So all the things that happen to get a game on the road. We've been working with many different teams in the MLS, but everything that we are doing is not soccer specific or anything like that. So yeah, super excited about where we are in short 9 months already. And that's what our care does.
We are a little bit more ambitious. We started our company with the three founding principle that how could we build a system that become the institutional memory or kind of a continuous learning system instead of you have to pre-train or you have to do RL and everything separately. Second founding principle we have is how do you break this probabilistic guess to a kind of a cause and effect. Basically, we could show the causality. And third founding principle is basically how can I do reasoning on a 20 watt instead of a 20 gigawatt. So those are the three kind of, if you think about a founding principle, we started all the foundational research. And then initial setup all the benchmark and product we are releasing from the lab. Then first product that we build is the institutional memory, that is take all the gigabyte of corpus information and automatically build a causal graph memory and basically kill the pre-training for a big enterprise, all the corpus of data. And we are able to beat the frontier model like Opus 4.8 or GPT 5.5, but almost 20% margin on the Alta domain or public benchmark with a 98% less token consumption. That is the kind of a second goal. And part of this, a way we build this, we call it a enterprise world model or kind of any environmental world model. We are able to show the relationship of cause and effect, either one time, space, or people are inferring that different things they're saying in a different way, that how they could be inferred together. So we are still very early in our journey. We are just rolling out our first model into many places, but we are very hopeful that if we can roll this out, then our biggest ambition is very simple, that people are building all the data center, but that is still 4 to 5 year journey. But how you could actually solve today's problem, that means all the data that exists today and current model that we have, how people can get that ROI today, that is not possible today because of the kind of all the groundwork that need to be done from the bottom up. So we are trying to kind of solve that problem for the enterprise. That basically means that how they could get the immediate ROI by using our system. So yeah, we are still hopeful. We are still early in our journey.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Tyler, just speak to the founders in the room. You've been at this for a little while. Successfully raised. You've built up a team. I think I always like to ask founders when they're speaking to early stage founders, what are one or two lessons you learned that you didn't know or you wish you knew when you first started?
I'd say it takes guts. I was rejected 39 times before I raised 17.5 million. And apparently that's not that much, but I take it personally. Every rejection, I remember it, and I'm petty. So if you ever rejected me, you're not coming back to the table for our Series B. Now, but to that end, you have to think about what problem am I going to solve and be laser focused on that problem, but why you? So when people say, oh, founder market fit, that's just a buzzword. But what problem are you going to solve? Pick one, and then why you? And it's you gotta be willing to go broke for it. When I started Edgerunner, I bootstrapped it, took a bunch of savings, pretty much my life savings to get it going, because I was like, F it, let's just do it. And you gotta have that, just you gotta be a little bit crazy, but you gotta be grounded but crazy at the same time. But again, startups never fail from being too focused. They fail from trying to do too much at once. And then again, you as a founder, don't think about, I want to make a bunch of money and I want the notoriety and I want to build cool things. I want to build things that the market's not ready for yet. That's one of the biggest pitfalls founders fall into, is they build something really cool and they expect the market to adopt it. Well, you can build something that the market's not ready for. But you still got to be ahead of the puck or go where the puck's going, right? So there's a balance. So I'd say, long story long, why you and what's the problem? And that's what the VCs are going to care about when you go to raise with them.
Perfect. So, sorry, I was going to say, Vamsi, similar question for you.
Oh, sorry.
Similar question for you. public knowledge, you recently raised your first round, $6 million pre-seed. I find a lot of my founder clients, that's literally the hardest part of being an early stage founder. You need a product to raise, you need to raise to have a product, so on and so forth. And pushing that snowball, getting it started is really difficult. So tell us about your journey to raising that $6 million. How did it happen? How did it come together?
Yeah, I think our journey was interestingly a little more easier than what you mentioned, Tyler. A lot of it comes down to credibility of the team. Like you mentioned, like why you? Like there could be 100 other builders who are probably better at building this product, but you have some delta or some alpha over them. And so for us, it was like we've taken a company public before. We know how to build technology. We know how to do it fast. We know how to build in a very complicated space. And so investors looked at that as credibility, and we built it very lean, right? And that is going to be the way forward for companies is how you're building lean. There was an era of blitz scaling when you just like hire hundreds of people and you try to like, outcompete on just raising funds and hiring a bunch of people. That era is probably a little bit stale and gone away. And so for us, it came down to like, credibility, identifying the problem really well, right? Like I said, my co-founder, he owns a sports team. He's seen the problems firsthand. If you hadn't, and if you're just somebody who's making a guess, that does not build the kind of trust and credibility. So those two, I think, were the primary factors. Obviously, we, did our due diligence, explained the product really well, the solutions, things like that. But ultimately, if I'm being honest, like it's those two things that mattered.
How many people said no to you? Can you beat 39?
Much less than 39.
Sorry, Tyler.
Well, I'm a
But it's
first time.
6.
Well, first time
But
founder.
it's 6. It's not 17 and a half. So you can still have that.
All right, Hasabul, I'm going to ask you a more of a technical question. Something that's really interesting. You recently came out of stealth. Your flagship product outperformed Claude and Codex for code localization. All right, how did you do that with the resources you have and the time that you had?
If you look into a very foundational thing, so the the way it was being put into the let me take a step back so it's easy to explain that how we build the Claude and Codex into the code localization or bug fixing. So when you are writing the research, what we found out is that like coding agent is spending 60% of the time reading file and 29% of the time is basically graping the system. When we build the model for the software engineering system, my first epiphany was, hey, this is like a GPS system. If I give coding agent some way, a GPS-like signal and refresh its context and the skill dynamically, those 90% of the reasoning token, I could take it out. So then I went back and thinking about, okay, so how I can do that? Then I was an original founding member of Nisira. That was the software-defined networking that get acquired by VMware. So I know these sidecar-based things very well because that's the networking sidecar. Everyone uses it. So saying, oh, let's actually put a sidecar into the lexicographical search. Every time coding agent go and try to read a file, we actually has a GPS location. So using that GPS location, we knows all their functional correlation and then just dynamically refresh the context and see that what happened. And once we start doing that, we found that, oh, it's very interesting. We can actually beat the best model by 10%. And we could actually compress the tasks by 5 to 8x. Basically, task time get compressed, and we could reduce the token by almost 60% in a public benchmark. So it's basically, if you think about, you're building a big technology, but you have to think about, okay, so how I'm going to invert that problem. Instead of solving the big problem, can I solve a micro problem? That developer is prompting, can I actually help on there? And that is kind of like that's the kind of just a single, like I could not do it if I am in a school because I did not have experience in a VMware or software-defined networking or sidecar and all other thing. So that's the reasons I think is that my industry experience is very kind of relevant here. So I know that, oh, there is another solution out there. I could just map that solution back here.
Thank you. All right, Tyler, a little off script, but I'm genuinely curious. Clients I have, most people come and talk, they have a B2B model or a B2C model. Your customer is the US government. And I don't know if you have any other customers, but we'd really love to know kind of like what that entails, how that may be markedly different than having a more traditional B2B or B2C model, and maybe how it might be similar in ways we don't think.
Yeah, so Edgerunner is effectively a research company, even though we have a product, because models aren't products, but how you put them together with domain-specific intelligence and then build engineering around them to make them useful, that's the product. Now, before Edgerunner, I was at a company called Stability AI. I was one of the people that helped train Stable Diffusion. We unleashed it. We had over 300 million downloads. We were the most popular generative AI model in the world. And it was really exciting. At the time, we were bigger than Anthropic. We were the kings. But we were in a tailspin because we had an uncanny ability to create value, but we didn't know how to capture it. And that's because models aren't products. And so what happened was at Stability, and I was head of supercompute, so I'm working in lockstep with the scientists to train Stable Diffusion 3, Stable Diffusion XL, Stable LM, Stable Video, Stable Audio. It was a lot of fun. We were multimodal, but we were training an ensemble of different models to work together for swarm intelligence, as it were. Palantir reached out, Sham, the CTO, and he was like, hey, look, we like what you're doing. These models can be compressed, they can live on device, they work with Intel. We'd figure out how to run on Intel and get away from NVIDIA's CUDA to give the world an alternative for national security. Because what happens when Taiwan's invaded? Well, NVIDIA is going to be in a world of trouble with TSMC in Taiwan. So we're like, all right, we need to build to spec for Intel. And so it was just serendipitous with them reaching out. But then we had our first Anthropic moment. Our scientists were like, no, we're not going to work with the military. And it's shameful because Silicon Valley's lost its way. It was founded on building defense tech. If you look back in the late 80s, early 90s, you would build defense tech and the military would pioneer technology and the commercial would adopt it. And so when we had that moment, I was like, wait a second. There's only a few hundred people in the world that can build these LLMs from scratch. The vast majority of them work at Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, or Stability, or wherever. But then if you're willing to do it, you're not going to really want to do it from the military. So that right there was moat. So we're like, all right, I grabbed some scientists that were pretty based, that were like, look, we need to build models to help the warfighter. And so that's sort of how it happened. And then I knew nothing about defense tech, even though I was in the Army. And part of all of our rejections, it's like, wait, you're going to build AIs, LLMs from scratch in defense tech? Like, you guys are crazy. And they just thought like it's too soon. But again, thanks to Madrona and awesome folks that believed in us, we're here. And what's awesome is, like with the administration, like we're not political. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm an American. And so we're working with the administration, and they've been very quick to push to adopt AIs, to adopt technology for the warfighter. And that's been going really well. So props to them for speeding up the process, because it's difficult to do business with the DOW. But at the same time, we're getting all this private data from the DOW. For example, with research and development creatives, with the Air Force Research Lab, the Army Research Lab, AI2C, we're getting all this private data that's not on the public web. Because what's happening right now, models are actually getting dumber. They're reaching convergence and they're becoming the same because they're training on all the same public domain data, all on the web. And you can only use so much synthetic data to make them better. So we're sort of hitting like a diminishing marginal returns with token costs. But then you get this private data, that's where your models have moat. So if I get logistics data from the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, I now have the best logistician because I have this private data, and then I can compress this model, put it on a device, and now I have unlimited tokens. I don't need the internet. And now I've created real value because I can reduce cognitive load on a logistician to help him or her problem solve. And so it just kind of unfolded there.
Amazing. Great story. Thank you. I'm going to pause for one second. We have about 10 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions at all that you want to throw in right now? I'll come back in like 5 minutes if you don't. Yeah.
Curious how you got Planterra to come back to you.
So that was tough. Actually, when I quit Stability, they wrote about it in Forbes, which was cool. So that was like my first time I ever had some notoriety because I was kind of like the man behind the man. And so when I quit, Forbes wrote about it, Alex Conrad. And then as I grabbed some scientists, we stood up Edgerunner. And then it took a while. Actually, what happened was we did a joint research project with Stanford and then the Space Force. Space Force, ironically, is my first customer. And it's not even on the device, it's in the data center. But we created the smartest, call it a guardian that could schedule a satellite from the ground station with natural language processing. Palantir was in the bake-off and we beat them. And we didn't even need the internet. And so Palantir was like, who the F are these guys? And so I'm trying to work with them and they were like, no. So I almost like, we did it too much. So we had to dial it back. We signed Paul Ryan, and then he's friends with Mike Gallagher, who leads their DOW business. So like things are now coming together. And then we built an integration in a Foundry with Palantir Foundry. It's a bunch of NoSQL data and JSON data. And now we can build an LLM to compress all that data and transform it into an actual insight. Because it's like, how do you read all this JSON data? It's a bunch of strings. And then now an LLM can compress it and say, with generative AI, I can say, all right, well, this is what this means in the TLDR. And of course, AI is not a silver bullet, but it's very good at taking a bunch of data and giving me the TLDR. And with that TLDR, I can then make a decision.
Oh, cool. Anybody else? Yeah.
Obviously, it's a little bit different because you built this incredible technology, which is super cool. But as you're interacting with it, like you told me, like you work with Palantir now, which is amazing. What is that kind of like go-to market? Maybe even talking with other vendors differ from like because it's enterprise is the most similar. But how do you think about go-to market when you're penetrating these different federal contracts from DOW to Space Force to even like state or county governments?
So the question is, how do you work with Palantir to, sort of augment their GTM strategy, even though they're like the 800-pound gorilla, is how I sort of see your question, which is a great question. Now, as founders, we all have like some delusional confidence. So we're thinking, wait, I can go disrupt the 800-pound gorilla and the incumbents. And just like with the research event we had at Stanford, and we did beat them, it's not good to outshine the masters. So then you almost have to like approach them with humility and be like, look, I want to augment you. You don't need me, but we can go where you can't go. So for example, you don't really care about edge devices and server boxes and disconnected environments because you're living in the cloud with your Palantir Foundry instances. So let us be a force multiplier for you, and then we can feed the synthetic data back into your Palantir Foundry or Gotham environment. So you have to think of creative ways to sort of be a force multiplier to help them sell more, even if you're going to compete against them. So you got to play that 4D chess, which I need some work on, because I'm thinking, hey, with more Edgerunner, you don't need as much Palantir. But now it's, let's be synergistic here. Back to the context. 1 + 1 = 3 is not correct in math, but it's correct when we're talking about the context of synergy. And so that's another thing that we need to teach AIs.
Amazing. Great question, Ian. Thank you. Okay, Fonzie, really quick. Would love to know, look, you're sports enterprise. Tell me about the future of sports enterprise. What does it look like? What's the end state?
Yeah. I think the end state for these organizations, let's say Arcero actually achieves its vision, is they are delivering great fan experiences. They are converting more people into fans. The most amazing thing we've seen is teams, they compete on field, but not off the field. So they're actually very cooperative with each other because they actually serve different markets, different people, different customers. And one thing we think we can bring to all of them is that collective anonymized intelligence of what works for some other team. Bring that to you, regardless of your size, regardless of your maturity. There's some teams which are completely new to the league, some teams which are old. So there's so much we can do and do it in a lean way. Help them run very efficiently, help them grow their top line, help them score 100 on their NPS. Like that's what we envision a sports team to look like.
Perfect. Thank you. And then last question, possible for you. If your vision comes to fruition, what does the future look like for engineering teams?
I think the ultimately all those $1 trillion money that going to AI that need to be returned. Otherwise, the entire world will be in a big trouble. Only way that will happen that either everyone in the world training their own LLM, or they have a way to make their data talk with the LLM. You have only one of the two way. So, like not everyone training their LLM, that is not going to happen. We don't have skilled people like that. So other way it will happen is basically you need to have your data to be out of box ready like that, so it can talk with your LLM. So that's the problem we are trying to solve. Basically, we could ingest enterprise corpus of data, and within 24 hours, they will be able to talk with any LLM. LLM becoming a stateless reasoning engine. So that's the future so we are heading to, and it has to work across finance, healthcare, legal, engineering, any other corpus.
Awesome. Thank you. So before we say thank you to our group here, I just want to say thank you, everyone. We are going to be around here for another hour until 8:30. At 8:25, Tyler and I are going to start kicking everybody out. So 8:30 means 8:30 because my events team, can we give them a hand, by the way, for putting this on? Is working extremely hard, and I want to let them go home. So thank you very much to our panel here. That was super interesting.